perfect, because I can't see it in my screen.
You know what?
But now if I spotlight you, 1 second. Sorry.
But you know what? We can't see the end of it. We can see the part you did. Yeah, that's it. We can't see the rest. Now we can.
Okay, well, once people get a couple times the over, under, over, it's repetition, they'll get it.
Okay.
I can walk them through, but I thought it would be easier to show it on this than the actual dough.
Right. So we're going to do that first, and then we're going to show it on the dough. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Continue to get your things together while I'm speaking. I welcome you all to the art of making and baking a challah. This is something that I've been doing for more than 25 years. I learned how to make challah from a Sisterhood member, and I've been doing it ever since. So I'm here to share my opinions with you, and hopefully you'll all become challah makers as well. A couple of things before we get started. As you know, this is a Sisterhood event. So I encourage everybody to go to the Adat Shalom website and check out all of the fabulous programming that Sisterhood does, educational, social, cultural, you name it, something there for everyone. You're welcome to come and hopefully become a member. A few things about the technical aspect today. First of all, I want to thank a few people who made this possible. Rudy, can you just wave to everybody? From Sisterhood, thank you so much for organizing this. I really couldn't have done this without your help.
My pleasure.
Give a quick wave, Jody. Jody's our technical person. She's going to do some fabulous things with the technical aspects today. And she did some of the advertising. So thank you so much for that. And then I have 2 helpers with me today. You don't see them by my side, but they're out there in cyberspace with you. I have Debbie Supplewit. Debbie, can you wave? And Ruth Hurwitz. Can you wave, Ruth? The 2 of them are going to be my assistants today. And the way this is going to work is I'll be giving you some instructions. We're all going to be working simultaneously. And if you have a question, feel free to ask your question. I'm going to try to get through it very quickly because we have very tight time constraints this morning making the dough. But if it appears to be something that you need a little extra help, more one-on-one, then Jody is going to put you in a breakout room with either Debbie or Ruth. Okay? And then you can work one-on-one. It's kind of the next best thing to being there. So they will work with you. They will try to get you back caught up because we're going to continue to move along, and then you'll rejoin the group. Okay? In terms of muting and unmuting, we've all experienced plenty of meetings and programs on Zoom this year. We know what it's like when someone's in a quiet space and someone walks into the room and they start chatting. We all have the pleasure of hearing their conversation, but it can be a little distracting too. So feel free to keep your devices unmuted so you can ask questions. And then if some noise builds up around you, please mute yourself. Okay? So that's that. The one time, you know, as I said, we're going to be doing things simultaneously, but the one time I want you to step back is when we get to the yeast proofing process. That's a very important procedure. It's very simple to do. Everybody panics about it, but it's very simple. I'm going to show you that today. So I'll just explain it, I'll demonstrate it, and then you'll go ahead and do it. Everything else we'll be doing together. Lastly, before we get started, with a show of hands, how many of you have never made challah before? This is your first time. Okay, I can't see everybody, but I assume there are a lot of you. And then show of hands, how many of you have made challah before, but maybe it wasn't so successful or you haven't made it in many years, so you're here for a refresher course? Okay, I'm sure there are some of you. And then I'm sure there are some of you who are here today just to watch and have fun just seeing the demonstration. So I welcome all of you as well. And then lastly, I think there's probably some of you who, that's my phone. Oh dear. I apologize, I'm moving my phone out of the room. So sorry about that.
So Ruth Zarin, it's about a third, and a third, actually. About a third people have never made challah before. A third are looking for a refresher course, and a third have made it before.
Wonderful. Okay. So my goal at the end of today is that everybody will have walked away with something. You'll feel you learned something new, or you'll certainly walk away with confidence, and you'll be excited to make challah again on your own. And in the future, if you ever have any questions, we'll give you my phone number. You're welcome to call anytime. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our bowl that you're going to be greasing. This bowl is to put your dough in to rise. Okay, so I've already greased mine just to show you it's kind of shiny. You can use either a cooking spray kind of a generous amount around your bowl. I'm going to use this to demonstrate. And then you can also use butter or margarine. I usually just take my stick of margarine. I use par margarine because I like my challah to be dairy-free, but you can use either butter, margarine, or cooking spray. If you're using your margarine or butter, just take your stick or a little piece of the margarine, and you just want to rub it around the bottom of your bowl and around the sides just a bit. Okay, you can see that it's kind of streaky. And then you're going to take your fingers and just rub it around on the bottom of the bowl and up on the sides, pull it up on the sides. And, you can use a round motion, whatever you want to do, as long as you coat every surface of the inside of your bowl. And this is very important for two reasons. Number one, before we cover our dough, we're going to be rolling it around in our bowl, okay? You're going to be rolling it around, even though you can't see the grease, it's there. And that keeps your bread nice and moist. We don't want the top of your dough to get dried out. And I'll show you how to do that when we get to that step. But that's, one of the primary reasons why we're greasing our bowl. Okay, the other reason we're greasing it is so that when we dump the bowl out on the counter, it comes out nice and easy, and it's going to feel really good on your fingers, and it'll be easy to work with. Okay, so I've greased, you could see how I greased this little bowl, but again, you're going to be greasing your big bowl, and it should be a bowl that's large enough for your dough to double in size. Okay, you want it, and I know if you've never made it before, then you don't know how much dough, but it's pretty much going to fill about a third of this bowl. And if I was using a bowl, or if you're using a bowl that's slightly smaller, it's probably going to come up to the top of the bowl. Okay? When you're done greasing your bowl, I'm going to ask you to put it, if you have a warm spot in your kitchen. If you don't, just put it next to you so it's accessible. The reason I put it over here is I have a recessed light here, and it shines down, and it's a really nice warm spot for everything to keep warm. Okay? So if you don't have a warm spot, just make sure it's not in a drafty place. Okay? Sometimes there are vents. You don't want a vent blowing cool air on it. Okay, is everybody pretty much done with that? Okay, so we're going to move on. Now you're going to take your 3 extra large eggs, and if you haven't cracked them yet, you're going to crack them and put them in your bowl. And we're just going to beat it a little bit. We want the eggs to mix together. Okay, so I'm just beating it a little bit. By the way, if you don't have extra large eggs, you could do 4 large eggs. Okay, I've done that too. I prefer the extra large myself, so I do 3 extra large eggs. If you go the 4 large eggs, then you're going to probably end up adding extra flour when you make the dough. Okay. Okay, so if you have your eggs beaten together, now we're up to the honey. And I just learned a trick this morning before we got started from some of our other expert bakers. And that is when you're measuring your honey, you can actually spray your measuring cup with your cooking spray and then pour your honey in. And it'll pour right out. I haven't done that because I wasn't aware of that. So I'm just going to add my honey to the beaten eggs. Now, when you add your honey, I'm going to ask you to do one thing. I usually measure my honey in a measuring cup like this, and it's a 1/3 measuring cup. So I usually have it in 2 portions. I didn't mention that in the recipe. I didn't say have it divided. It doesn't matter. If you measured out 2/3, what's happening? Oh my goodness.
Ruth, I muted you so you can get your phone call. Ellen Richard, you have a question? We've got some expert bakers here.
I do have a question. The honey, I measured in a liquid measuring. I see that you're measuring it in a dry. There is a difference in the amount of honey then. Which one should we use?
Ruth, sorry, please unmute yourself.
I always use a glass for liquid.
So are you talking about a liquid measure?
Right, I do mine in, just a Pyrex glass.
That's what I did, and I wasn't sure if I'm seeing a dry measure now.
Okay,
and that does make a different amount of honey.
Yeah, I was just going to add that you can do either way. I mean, I've always done it with the dry measure. I know this is the dry measure here. I've always done it that way.
Okay,
and
but either one.
It shouldn't matter. But
so Ruth and Debbie, you're confirming it does not matter which version of a measuring device or whatever you use. You can use either the cup or the dry measuring or the glass.
Right.
Okay.
The one thing is, the reason I usually do it divided is because I will keep back a heaping tablespoon of my honey for the yeast mixture, okay, which I'm going to go over next. But you can actually have a little extra honey in your dough, but nothing's going to happen to it. So go ahead and put your 2/3 cup of honey in with your eggs right now.
Just 1/3. 1/3, right?
Yeah. So because I want to clear in the recipe, if you have just 1/3 cup, if you have 2 separate 1/3 cup measures, go ahead and set one aside and just put 1 cup in now. If you did 2/3 together, go ahead and put your 2/3 cup in. It won't matter. Okay. And I really scoop it all out because honey is a very viscous liquid, as you know. And if you just pour it out, you're going to leave half of it behind. And this is the good stuff that's into the recipe. So I, really get every bit out. And then mix it up.
So that is where spraying it ahead of time helps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Spray it, and you don't have sticky fingers like me. And that's why I keep this nearby. Okay. Now, if everyone has incorporated their honey, it's going to look something like this. Can you see that? It's just mixed together. All right. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to proof our yeast. This is the fun part. There are 2 very important things about proofing yeast. One is the temperature of your water, And the second thing is that you have a sweetener. Both of those are important to activate the yeast. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to don't do it now. I just want you to listen for a minute, but we're going to get very warm water from our sink, okay? 1.5 cups. It's kind of like bath water, if you think of it. If you were to step into a bath and it was scalding hot, you know, you would jump back and it wouldn't be a pleasant thing. So it's the same thing for the yeast. If it's scalding hot, it kills it right off, okay? And then your dough won't rise. On the other hand, if it's too cool, like just if you were to step in a cool bath, that's not very pleasant either. You don't want to remain in there. So you want to make sure that your water temperature is really nice and toasty warm like a bath. I did check the actual temperature. It's supposed to be between 95 and 115 degrees. Different sources said different things, so that was the general range. None of us are probably going to throw a thermometer in our water, but that gives you an idea. It's like kind of like body temperature, so it should be nice and cozy and warm.
Ruth, please pause for a second. Linda, I see you have a question. Linda, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, so please press unmute.
I have had, I've made challah, and one of the things that always makes me a little uncomfortable is the temperature of the water. And so I try to figure out why didn't it come out the way I had hoped. So I actually have used a thermometer. I've looked online and they said, the temperature up to 115. So just because I'm paranoid, I have checked the water, so you're within that range because, you're doing this whole project and it can be ruined because of your yeast.
Exactly. Very, very good point. Thank you so much for that. Absolutely. So that's it either makes it or breaks it. But keep in mind, again, like warm bath water, it should be nice and toasty. So I get my 1.5 cups, and then when I put it down, I actually take my pinky and I just put my finger in it. If it has cooled down, like maybe I got distracted, I thought it was, ready, and I put it down and I'm talking to someone, I come back. If I put my finger and it's cooled down, there's no shame. I dump it out and I start again, okay? And particularly those of you who are going to measure it out and pour it into a bowl, it might cool down a little bit when you're doing that. So, if you feel it once it's in its bowl and it doesn't feel nice and warm, go ahead and redo that. Okay, so you have your 1.5 cups.
You're saying redo the water before you put the yeast in?
Yes.
Okay. So,
I'm checking it with my finger, and now it feels nice and warm. So I'm going to take my 2 tablespoons of yeast at this point and pour that in, okay? Now, the sweetener, this is what is going to activate the yeast. So this is when I take a heaping tablespoon. It's just like a spoon from my silverware, okay? I put it in my 1/3 cup of honey. This is my extra cup, and it's a real thick tablespoon of honey, and I drop that into the bowl. Now, if you have already put your 2/3 cup of honey into your egg mixture, then just take some extra honey at this point, and just so you have a nice heavy spoonful of honey ready to go, okay? So once you put that honey into your bowl, you're going to mix it up gently. If you whip it up real fast, you're going to cool down the liquid. So you just do, kind of like a figure 8 or a few swishing around. And then you're going to notice that the yeast rises up to the surface of the water. At this point, excuse me, I take my spoon and I just move it along to the side edges, okay? I'm not this spoon, I'll use a regular spoon, but I just move the yeast to the side and I swish it back and forth, okay? I'll take some more and swish it and I'll push that down. This whole process is going to take 10 or 15 seconds. It's very fast, Okay, you're just pushing it and swishing it like this along the edge of your bowl or your measuring cup on the inside, and that is going to create a very nice, creamy, thick layer on top of your water. Okay, so once you do that, you're going to see the yeast actually creates a creamy, frothy layer that's going to grow up above the liquid. Okay, and that shows you that your yeast is proofing. It's getting all ready, it's activating, and it's ready to go into your dough. All right, so I'm going to show you quickly how to do that, and then you can go ahead. If you want to do it at the same time, you can do it at the same time. My water takes a minute to heat up. My hot water heater's on the other side of the house, so this will just take a minute to get warm water here. Does anybody have any questions about this procedure?
Ruth, are you using a 2-cup measuring cup or a 4-cup?
I use a 4-cup. And that's another thing, I'm glad you asked that. Keep in mind that when the yeast frothy layer is rising up, it's going to be double in size. So when I use 1.5 cups of water, I'm going to end up with like 3 cups of proofed yeast. So if you're pouring it into a bowl, make sure your bowl is large enough to accommodate about 3-4 cups. All right. Now it feels like my water is like bath water. It's nice and warm and toasty. So I'm going to measure out 1.5 cups of water. Okay. Now I'm bringing it over and I'm going to put my pinky in it. It feels nice and warm still. So I'm going to go ahead and put my 2 tablespoons of yeast, just drop that right in. And now I'm going to take my heaping tablespoon of honey. I just drop that right in and I start to give it a little bit of a mix, not vigorously, just gently. Can you all see that okay? Okay. So now I'm actually going to come over closer, and can you see how it's like little bits of kind of clumping on top?
Will
So
you hold it a little bit higher up?
like that?
I don't know, just a couple of different ways so that people can see it.
Okay. So I'm going to move my yeast to the side and just swish it a little back and forth. Do a little bit more back and forth.
Would you say to do it softly or vigorously?
No, it's soft. It's a gentle motion because, again, you really don't want to be cooling down your liquid. Well, it's kind of, I mean, you really want to push against the side, but you don't want to like be stirring it real fast, okay? You just keep doing this till your little clumps blend in, and they don't have to be perfect. If you have a few on top when you're done, that's going to be okay because they all will blend in eventually. But just to get it activated, it's important to just squish that against the sides. All right, I'm almost done with this. I am going to have a few clumps because I'm kind of doing it in an awkward position. I will show you what it looks like once I'm done. Are any of you doing this at the same time, or are most people watching? Do you have a sense, Jody, of how many people are doing it or just watching?
Everyone is doing it.
I have a question.
And
How do you keep,
yep.
oh, sorry. How do you keep the yeast from sticking to your spoon? I think I used it.
Stir it around a couple of times, but you see, it should really just wash right off.
I think I made a mistake and I used the plastic measuring spoon, the tablespoon. It's okay. It's coming off now. Thank you.
Okay.
That's a good question, Clara. Linda has a question. Linda, I'm going to ask to unmute you.
And I'm going to show you my bowl.
Ruth, can you go over what you said about adding the honey to the mixture? I just put in a tablespoon of honey and I'm just kind of mixing it a little bit. Is that correct?
I apologize, say that again?
Can you go over adding the honey again? Because I added the 1 tablespoon of honey to my yeast and water mixture. And are you just kind of blending it, mixing it lightly?
Yes, once you take your spoonful of honey and you drop it into your bowl, you just give it a gentle stir, okay? And that, from the warmth of your water, it's going to melt the honey off, and it's going to help, a gentle stir is helping you mix that honey and yeast together into the water.
And then if you have little lumps of the yeast still visible, do you try and kind of mix it around with your spoon so you get rid of those, or?
The way you get rid of the lumps is you take your spoon and you push them off over like the top surface of the water, and just rub it along the sides of the inside of your bowl. Just a back and forth motion. And then you just push it down, and you're going to move some more of your little lumps. Just rub it back and forth and push that down in, and you just stir it a few times. Yes.
And eventually, I wanted to ask you another question. I've made challah before, and I've had some problem with the yeast, as I had mentioned, with the temperature, but I've never added the honey. What is the effect of adding the honey to the yeast?
Okay, as I said, there are 2 things you want to do to activate the yeast. And one of them is the honey. You can use sugar if you're using a challah recipe with sugar or a bread recipe with sugar, then you can add some sugar. But if you leave out the sugar, or if you use a cool water temperature or boiling hot water, you're going to kill the yeast.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so overheating the water kills the yeast, and not adding the sweetener will not activate it as well.
Okay, so the sweetener is to activate it.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So, in fact, when I first started making challah, it says that you can put this dry active yeast right in your flour. I didn't realize that, so I did that, and it never rose.
Yeah.
And then I added it in water because I thought I heard that you added it in water, but then it didn't rise again. You needed the sweetener. So, I'm going to show you. It's only been a couple of minutes, but I'm going to bring over my yeast mixture, and I'm going to see the top. You see how it's creamy? And can you see from the side?
Yeah.
It's starting to separate. I have like a layer here. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so this very little top layer is starting to separate. It's getting frothy and creamy on top. So I'm going to put that back in my little warm home here because it really likes the light.
Ruth, I have a question. Hi, Ruth. I have a question. Mine isn't separating and it looks just liquidy. So did I kill it?
Well, did you test it? Was the water nice and warm?
I would have jumped in, Ruth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And you added a nice heaping tablespoon of honey?
Yes.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
Is the date of the yeast good?
Yeah, I just got it, in fact.
Oh, okay, because that's yeah.
Did you rub it along the sides?
I did.
And put it and gently stir it a little bit more?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sue, I made you a spotlight. Can you just pick up your, can you pick it up so that Ruth Sharon can see it?
With embarrassment?
No, you're not the only one.
Can you
Can you
see
pick it up a
it?
little bit? No, we cannot see it.
Coming over close. You know what? You have like a white bowl, so
Yeah,
I
you can't
do.
see it.
I
I
can't
do.
see it. Okay, let me ask you this.
Ruth,
Yeah.
I used a 2-cup glass measuring cup, and now
Yeah.
I'm rising so high. What should I do?
Oh, that's why I think you missed, hang on, I think you missed my instruction in the beginning of this segment. What I said was that I use a 4-cup measure because it doubles in size.
But Ruth, not everybody has a 4 cup.
Okay,
I have a 4. I have a plastic 4. Should I dump it or just leave it? Oh my God, it's bubbling over.
I would put it in the 4-cup.
You put it in
It's
a 4
okay to use a glass bowl instead of a cup, right?
Ruth, let me chime in. At this point, she should dump it in with her margarine and her egg and her honey.
Okay. All right, go ahead and just do that. Okay, but Sue Rollinger, if you it's not.
Pardon me? It's doing nothing.
Okay, so here's what I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna ask you to go into a breakout.
Okay.
She has another method of proofing the yeast.
Okay. Is she gonna put me in the breakout room?
Yes.
Yep. I'm gonna put you in a breakout room in 1 second. Who, with Debbie or Ruth? I didn't hear, I'm sorry. With Debbie? Okay, so Sue, give me 1 second. I'm gonna send you over there, okay?
Okay, everybody else, and I can't see everybody, I only see a few of you, but of everybody else, raise your hand if you're starting to see a separation, because you should start to see a separation. Yay! I'm so excited. Okay, so I did not add my extra 1/3 cup of honey. If you didn't, this is a good time to throw it into your eggs now.
Oh, into the eggs.
So you should have your 3 eggs and you should have 2/3 of a cup of honey now blended in your egg mixture. Oh my gosh, we gotta run out of time. I'm
So you're adding the other,
you are going to add your honey, the extra 1/3 cup. You should have 2/3 cup of honey in your egg mixture now.
Can you overproof the yeast?
Not generally unless you leave it for a really long time and it gets cold.
Okay.
Okay, so very quickly now, we really have to get going. Jody, we're not going to be done at 1/4 Okay.
It's okay, I can always start the Pirkei vote on my iPad.
Okay.
I have a backup plan, it's okay.
Okay, so everybody now, you're going to take your 4 tablespoons of margarine or butter, and you're going to pop it in your microwave and melt it. All right? So I'm just putting mine back in the oven to warm it up because it cooled off.
I had a quick question. If you put a tablespoon of honey into that yeast to proof it, do I need to add an extra tablespoon to that egg mix? Because I took it out of the 1/3 cup.
No, not at all.
Okay.
That's the amount that I actually use. When Debbie makes her mixture of yeast, she puts her 2/3 cup in right away with her eggs, and then she adds like an extra bit of honey to her yeast mixture.
Ruth, does the butter have to be warm or can it just be room temperature melted?
It should be warm because remember the name of the game here. I apologize, I'm behind my camera. Remember the name of the game here is you want everything to be warm. Okay, if you can bring your eggs to room temperature, that's great. If you can't, don't worry about it, but you really do want to just keep things as warm as possible. So I always add my margarine nicely heated. It's, you know,
Can you use oil instead of margarine?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I've never done that, so I don't know if it works. I'm sorry. I will look that up and get that for you after this class. If you've melted your margarine or butter, you can go ahead and pour that right into your eggs and honey mixture. Now it'll go in really nicely. This is another one that I really scrape the sides of the container once I melt my margarine, because if it stays behind, it's not getting into your beautiful challah, and you really want to get as much of it in as you can. So do you see that? I really scrape it out of there. Okay, so at this point, everybody should have in their bowl of wet ingredients, you should have your honey and your eggs and your margarine. Okay, now I'm going to come over with my yeast because I want you to see how beautiful this is, and hopefully yours is the same. Can you see here? I have a layer of water and then I have the foam above it. You see how it's divided? And that indicates that the yeast is activated. Okay, so now I know my dough should rise. Is everybody at this stage now with their yeast? Okay.
Please nod your head so I can say yes.
Okay.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. Alex Winters is gorgeous.
Okay, before we add that,
Awesome.
okay, let it sit for just another few seconds, okay? And I forgot something in the beginning. We have 6 cups of flour measured out in your bowl, and I want you to add to it your 2 teaspoons of salt. Okay, so 2 teaspoons of salt sprinkled into the flour. You can use a spoon or a fork and just mix that in nicely, because you really don't want anyone to bite into their challah and get a mouthful of salt. Okay, so that's nicely blended and it's ready to go. Now, once we get all the ingredients in this bowl, keep in mind you need room. Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 options here. If you are going to be kneading your challah dough on your counter or your table, then it means all of your ingredients are going into this bowl. So again, you want it to be large enough to incorporate both this and your liquid ingredients. Okay, this bowl is a little bit larger than what's needed. I like it because it gives me room to start working the dough before I dump it out. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If you're using your KitchenAid and
Yes.
you're using dough hook,
That's
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm just going to get to that next.
Okay, thank you.
If you're in the group of people who are going to be using an electric mixer with the dough hook, then I'm going to double check with Debbie, because Debbie's going to be the person you're going to break out and do your dough with her at that point.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay, so Debbie, my question to you is, when people do the mixer, are they just dumping the flour and salt into the mixing bowl and
Yep.
then? Okay,
Yes.
so for the people who are going to be using their electric mixer, you don't have to have a really big bowl like this. You just have to have your 6 cups of flour and 2 teaspoons of salt in any bowl, okay?
In the mixing bowl.
Oh,
What I
In
was
the
going to
mixing
ask
bowl
though,
for the mixer.
Okay,
Yeah.
she's saying put it in the mixing bowl that's gonna go in your mixer with the dough hook.
what
Have
I was going to ask,
salt in that bowl.
what I was going to ask though was how much kneading do you do? If you do it in the bowl like you're doing, you say 10 minutes. What if we're using the dough hook? How much do we knead it?
We're gonna do that in the breakout room.
Oh, okay, okay.
I
Okay,
have a question.
yes,
I have a question. Hello,
yes, go ahead.
is the mixing bowl the same as the dough rising bowl? Is all one bowl?
You're gonna be transferring it, because remember, you wanna grease all the surfaces of your dough.
Okay, so we're mixing it in a different bowl than the rising bowl.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, So now I'm gonna ask everybody, Sue Rollinger, is your,
Yeah.
how does
Yes,
your,
I'm rising.
is
I am rising. Yes,
you're rising, great.
I'm rising.
Okay, so at this point, I'm gonna ask everybody, just give your egg mixture a little swish because sometimes the margarine or butter starts to clump a little bit. So just mix that up so it's nice and smooth. And now you're gonna take your beautiful yeast mixture. It should have risen nicely. And we're gonna pour that, I'm just gonna move my flour out of the way so you can see.
How do you
Okay,
melt?
Ruth, we need to, anybody doing a mixer with the dough hook, we need to go to a breakout room at this point.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so raise your hand if you have an electric mixer, you're gonna go with Debbie. Keep your
Okay.
hand up so that
Just give me a second. I'm gonna move you. You're gonna get a notice saying, move me. Hold on, is it alphabetical? Okay, so Debbie, so I see Ellen. E, where's E? Okay, Ellen, this one, Sharon. Okay, so who else? I see Susan. Amy. Lori. Anybody else have a mixer?
Celia,
Thank you, Celia.
Errol,
Meryl too, Meryl?
Errol
Okay.
11.
Okay, I'm gonna move you. If there's others, that is fine. Okay,
Okay,
anyone else have a mixer that needs to go in there? Okay,
okay, all right, so at this point, everybody take your beautiful yeast mixture and pour it into your egg mixture, the eggs and honey. And at this point in time, and I really, again, scrape it all out. At this point in time, I sometimes go through all the ingredients in my head, and I'm gonna tell you why. So there's only 7 ingredients in this whole recipe, and one of them is water. So I quickly say to myself, okay, I have in my bowl here, I have my eggs and I have my honey, and I have my yeast, which has water in it. Okay, that's 4 ingredients. And I put my margarine in is 5, and then I have the flour and the salt. Why do I do this? The reason is because once, maybe twice, but I think it was only once, but once is usually enough, I left my margarine in my microwave and I forgot about it. And it is not easy to add it to your dough once you've put the wet and the dry ingredients together. Okay, so it may never happen to you, but if it does, you'll laugh. That's why I always check my ingredients. So
Do you
now,
mix any of this? Do you mix the yeast and egg mixture?
the yeast should have just gone into your honey.
right, I think Ruth, what Linda's asking is when you pour your yeast mixture into your wet mixture, do you stir it
Yes.
before putting it into the dry?
Yes, yes. This should be mixed nicely, okay? And now we're going to put it into the flour and salt mixture. You're just going to pour it right in. And again, I just scrape the sides because you don't want to leave any of this behind. All right. And
Is there a problem with using metal versus wood versus like a spatula, like a rubber spatula? I heard a long time ago not to use metal with it.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I use metal when I do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I want you all now to just give a gentle, a good stir here. So you can see it's getting all gloppy, and come around the sides of your bowl and let that flour fall into your mixture. Just keep mixing it around so that it starts to incorporate into what's going to be your dough. Okay, can everyone see this? Does your mixture look like this? Oops, I'm gonna dump it out. Okay. Now, once it gets kind of thick, take it off your fork Okay, and now we are going to dump out, you should have an extra cup of flour ready, and you're gonna put it maybe about a third of a cup on your surface that you're going to be kneading on, and just swish it around a little bit, make a nice little circle here, okay? Everyone
I
can,
always think of my ancestors when I'm doing this, 'cause I think of a pinch of that, a pinch of this, a pinch of the flour. There's no exact measurement.
so before we dump this out, I take my hand, I put it in the bowl, kind of at the side of the bowl, and I go underneath and push on top. So under and over, go to the side and pull over. And now you're starting the kneading process. I do this a bunch of times so that my dough starts to form. Okay, do you see how it's starting to look like a dough already? All right, and you kind of swish some of the dough around the side so you can get off the flour that's stuck to the side. And then once you have it starting to look like a dough, you're going to dump it right on your counter where you put your flour. All right, and then I take my hand at this point, it's got a lot of dough on it, and I just kind of wipe around my bowl, and the rest of the stuff just kind of comes right out.
Could I ask if you put that whole cup of flour on your counter?
No, just pour about a third of a cup. It's
Okay, yeah.
it's not very much. You get to see that. Can you see it here?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to put that right on your flour. Take the dough from your hand a little bit, and now you're going to put the dough. You're going to put your fingers of one hand underneath, like opposite you, and pull it towards you and push down. And you keep turning the dough. You turn it and push down, just like that. Okay, I'm using.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm having a hard time getting all my flour and all the wet and dry mixture mixed into a big glob. Can I just do it with my fingers or no?
Yes, you should use your hand. Once you get it generally mixed with the fork, then you're going to put your hand in the bowl and kind of scoop around the sides and push it in. Okay, and just start that kneading process in your bowl. And do you see what I'm doing here, everybody? I'm, kind of the kneading process. I take my hand on the outside opposite me and I push it down, opposite and push it down. Now, as it starts to get sticky, you want to keep adding flour because eventually you want to try to incorporate this whole cup of flour. The one thing you have to keep in mind, and I just kind of press down like this. Do you see what I'm doing here? It's a very aggressive, this is the aggressive part of the recipe. You really want to push down hard. This is where you can get your aggressions out if you have some issues. But as it starts to get sticky, just roll it around in your flour. Okay, you don't want to add a lot at a time because it's gonna, then it's hard to get it to incorporate. But just roll it a little bit and keep kneading it, pushing on it. And then once it gets blended in, I pour my flour onto my surface. I don't pour it on the challah because you don't want to get your challah dried out. And I feel like if you pour the flour on top of your challah, you don't have as much control as if you put it on the counter. So if you put it on the counter, you can, move more of the flour over into your dough, or you can push it out of the way if you felt like you put too much.
What do you need to put on your hands to keep the dough from sticking all over your hands? Does it mean that I can just mix it right, or?
Well, I'll show you. I have, so when I get to a point where it's, like this, it's pretty much incorporated. I go like this. I just rub it off my hands, okay? Just like that. You're not gonna get it all off, but hopefully the wet stuff you can get off like that. And your hands will still look like that, okay? You still have some dough on your hands.
You take my watch off, please.
And then when you drop that in, you're just gonna let that go into your dough. You're gonna blend that into the dough. So you see now my counter is dry. I'm swishing over some more flour and just keep adding it and kneading this dough so that you get in as much flour. And what I want to let you know is that the temperature in the room plays an important part in your dough. If it's summertime and it's very humid in your room, your dough is going to have a hard time firming up. I mean, it'll firm up like this, but you will find that it stays kind of wet and you have to keep adding more flour. And I've actually had times in the summertime where I've had to add like an additional half a cup or cup to my challah because the room is just so moist. On the other hand, in the wintertime, when it's dry in the room, sometimes I can only get in maybe half a cup of flour, and that's okay too. It'll be just fine. Now we're going to be kneading for like 10 minutes. You keep pouring out your flour. Do you see how I'm doing this? I keep pouring some flour on the counter and I just rub it around my surface, roll the dough in it. And as you get more of a form dough, you can do this, like you just let some of the flour come, coat your dough. And, and I push some aside because again, at this point when it's getting dry, you don't want to add a lot of flour at one time. You just want to add a little bit each time. So, I actually didn't take a note of when we started the kneading process. I usually look at my...
It was about, I sent them in and their 10 minutes is closing.
Okay. So, my dough is starting to feel nice and thick. I'm still adding more flour. And I just drop it like this, let some of the flour come off. I push that off to the side because again, I don't want to add a lot at one time.
What is the purpose of adding the flour?
What
is the purpose?
It's making the dough, and it makes it nice and elastic.
Jody, excuse me.
Yep.
Our class, our room logged out. Can we
Yep.
get another one? We were still having some problems.
Yep, I will put you back in.
Thank you.
Yep, I'll put you back in for another 10 minutes.
Now, I'm going to show you here. My dough is just about done. I can feel it's. The way you can tell is if you put your hand on your dough like this and take it off. If it's not really sticking, it's getting to the point where it's almost done.
Ruth,
Yes.
do we have to use all the flour? It seems like it's getting a little dry, my dough.
Right. So I actually have about a third of a cup left, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get it in.
Oh,
So
okay.
that means that, your room is probably a little drier,
Yeah. Okay,
and that's okay.
okay.
I always say try to get in as much as you can because it's, it's just a little bit more hot.
I'm multitasking. I'm also monitoring the Sisterhood.
I also noticed you're making it more, you're trying to make it more of a circle or more of a rectangle?
It's going to be a round blob of dough.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so look at my dough.
It's more rectangular?
take a look at my dough. You see it? It's a round blob.
Okay.
All right. So I hope that everybody is kind of finishing up now with the kneading process. Does your dough look something like this now and it comes off your hands easily? Yeah, it's looking good. I see some of you. Okay, so now I want you to take your bowl that you were that you greased at the beginning of this session, and you're going to put your dough right in the bowl. Okay, and is everyone doing this now?
No.
I hope everyone is doing this. Yes, beautiful. Okay, so you're going to take your dough and you're just going to roll it around gently with your fingers. Just, do you see what I'm doing here? I'm just rolling it around gently, and that's ensuring that my challah dough is getting nice and coated with the grease that was in my bowl. All right? And now, once you've done that, you want to cover it. And I use, I hate to say it because I just saw a program last night on plastic wars, but I use plastic wrap. And I was told this morning, this is something I just learned. If you take your plastic wrap that you're going to use to cover your bowl and you spray it with your cooking spray and then put it over your bowl, if your dough rises and touches the plastic, it won't stick. Okay, I don't need to do that because I have a large enough bowl and my dough is not the top. But if you're concerned at all that your bowl may not be big enough, then spray it lightly and cover your bowl. Now, if you can see, you see my dough now in the bowl?
I won't distract you.
And it's covered. Everyone just stop what they're doing for 1 second. Just take a look at the camera. Okay. I see yours, Sue Lutz. Yeah. Perfect. And
One question.
yes.
I'm rolling it, but I'm noticing that on the bottom of the dough, it's sort of still separating a little bit. There's like little creases and stuff. It's not perfectly, round and flat.
Okay. You might need to just knead it a little bit more. I want to show you something about my dough. I'm going to bring it right up. Do you see I have some like little craters and pits?
Yeah.
I've seen doughs before that are perfectly smooth. Unfortunately, I'm not one of those bakers. So I have little nooks and crannies, but it still works.
Okay.
Okay. And then once you have your bowl covered, you're going to take it and put it, this is where it's important to have it in a warm spot. Again, I have it under my recessed light in the soffit here. If you don't have a warm place in your kitchen, I would recommend putting your bowl of dough maybe in your oven with the light switch on. If you have an oven light, because that I think heats up the oven, but you don't want to turn your oven on unless you have a specific
Proofing. Yeah.
And I did look up the temperature because I wanted to be sure to tell you that the ideal temperature for rising the dough is 80 to 90 degrees. Okay, so like my room here is probably about 70 degrees or 71 degrees. And then with that light, it probably brings it up close to 80 in that spot. And that's why the dough rises over there. So keep that in mind as to where you're going to have your dough rise.
So I can put proof on my oven and put it in the oven.
Yes, and just leave, make sure you leave a space. You don't want to like you have an oven rack and then you put your bowl and you have an oven rack right above it and it starts to rise, it might hit the bottom surface of your rack. So I would probably remove any racks that are above it and just put your bowl in the middle of your oven with your proofing setting. Okay, so how is everybody feeling? Does your dough look good and is it in your bowl? Just raise your hand or nod your head or something. Thumbs up, yay, okay, great.
Yeah, looking good.
Wonderful.
I
Okay,
just want to say, I took my 2-cup glass with the yeast and it was like bubbling over and I gently poured it. I have a plastic 4-cup and it very gently transferred it and then let it rise some more. It seemed to be okay.
wonderful. So that also means that you started with a warm enough temperature, you know, that it didn't cool down too much. So that's great.
Hey,
Yeah.
Ruth,
Yes.
did you say if you have a proofing mode in the oven to put it in there without the plastic wrap?
No. Still cover it.
Oh, okay, okay.
You still cover it because I use the
Okay.
proofing
Yeah, I
mode
usually do,
on my range.
Okay,
You still cover it with plastic wrap. It
Okay.
just keeps the oven just a warm temperature.
right, okay, got it.
And it's really essential. I can't emphasize enough that your challah dough has to stay moist. So if you take your wrap off, it's going to dry out.
Got
So
it, okay.
you keep it covered.
Debbie mentioned when you put your challah into the oven to rise on the warm, what temperature is that? Because each oven is different for the warm temperature.
Mine says
You know,
100.
don't put it in warm. It has to be the proof setting.
So if you
Warm
do
would
not
be-
have a proof setting on your oven, if you just have like a regular oven, do not put it in the oven to rise.
No, I would say if you don't have a proof setting, but you have a light in your oven, if you can turn on the oven light and put your bowl in there, then I think that the light from the warmth, I mean, you'll get warmth from the light, and I think that will help.
Should I do that, didn't I?
Does that make sense?
You can just leave it on the counter. You don't have to put it in the oven, correct?
Correct. You can do that. But again, it's going to rise better if it's in a warm spot. So if it's just on your counter, make sure there's no drafts. If you have a light nearby, you can turn the light on near it or something, just so it keeps a warm environment. Okay. So at this point,
How long are we leaving it here?
okay. At this point, I'm going to say we finished with our dough around 11 o'clock, which means we're going to be ready to punch down the dough at 12:30. So what I'm going to ask is if everybody can, we're going to stay on for a couple of minutes because I just want to give you some instructions on how to be ready for part 2 of the challah baking. But while your dough is rising, you can get off of Zoom. Is that correct, Jody? We should get off, right?
Because I'm monitoring Rabbi Bergman's Pure Care vote on my iPad, I can just leave this open and I'm just going to close my screen. So if you don't want to worry, you can either zoom out or you can log out of Zoom, or you can just stay on and just put it in the corner. And I would probably take your camera off just in case you decide to, you know, you're not paying attention, you're running around or doing something.
That's perfect. So, okay, so at this point, if everyone can stop what you're doing for 1 minute, like if you're already starting to clean up, just take a pause. Okay, everyone just take a pause for 1 minute, come back to your cameras, and let's just talk about what we need to do before we meet up again. What is that, Beacon? Oh, okay.
Someone's setting their oven.
Okay, all right. So is everyone there? I can't see. Jody, is everyone back pretty much?
I'm going to put it back into, you can put yourself back into gallery view if you want to see everybody.
Okay, let me do
So I'm
that.
gonna turn the spotlight off of you.
Okay.
Does that change your screen?
Yes, but now I'm seeing you only. So I'm going to go ahead and do gallery view.
Yep, do gallery view and then you can see everybody.
Yeah.
First of all, everyone did an amazing job. I'm very, very proud of you. I make Ruth's recipe. I could not figure out how to do 3 things this morning, so I chose to just take one out of the freezer that I made a few weeks ago. But I'm really impressed with everybody.
Well, I'm so glad you're all here. As I said, this is truly a work of love for me. I share my challahs with people, and I teach as many people as I can because, you know, there's just so much joy in doing this.
A big thank you. A big thank you.
My pleasure. So I want to just let you know what you should do now in your hour and a half. You're going to have a lot of time on your hands now. We're going to come back on at 12:15. If you want to leave your camera turned off and just keep it on so you'll have the Zoom link ready to go, you're welcome to do that. I'll hang around a little bit here by the camera if anyone has any questions or you just want to chat, I'll be available. What I'd like you to do in this break time, your dough is rising, you don't need to touch it. If you want to go and take a peek after about half an hour and go, ooh, it's growing, you know, you can do that and keep an eye on it. It's exciting to see it grow. You want to make sure you have your clean counter again, so you're going to just, you know, clean this surface wherever you're going to be braiding your dough when we come back. That has to be ready to go, clean and dry. You also want to have a little bit of flour in your cup. You shouldn't need much, but I like to have it. Sometimes I don't use it at all, but if your dough gets a little sticky, you might want to put a little bit on the counter, which I'll show you how to do when we get to that. So I have, I actually didn't get all of my flour into my dough today. I think my room was a little dry. For those of you who were in Debbie's room, I don't know if she mentioned about the temperature. If you're making challah during the summertime and it's very humid, you're going to put more flour in. Sometimes I'll put 1.5 cups. I think once I even put 2 cups of flour in, it still felt kind of sticky, and it's because of the moisture in the room. On the other hand, in the wintertime, sometimes it's a little bit dry, and like today, I only got about 2/3 of a cup of my flour into my dough. So you play with it. It has to do with the water, the room temperature, so, and the humidity. So have about 1/3 of a cup ready to go on your clean counter, and have your baking pans ready. I'm just grabbing, if you like to put on parchment paper, if you have parchment paper, you can put on a sheet of parchment paper.
If you don't, what's the purpose of putting parchment paper on? What does it do with the dough?
You know what the truth is? I think the purpose of the parchment paper is it makes the cleanup very easy. I've done it both ways for like probably 20+ years. I would spray a little bit of oil on the pan and swish it around, or I would take a little bit of margarine. I've done it both ways. And then I've done it with the parchment paper, and that's just easy cleanup as far as I'm concerned. So you're going to have.
At what level do you need to put the baking racks in your oven?
When you bake it, okay, I think it's going to depend on individual ovens. I happen to have an ancient oven. It's very small, and I only have 2 racks in there. So I put one, I'm trying to think if it's the very lowest. Hang on, I'm going to check to be sure. Yes, I have like 1, 2, 3. I have 4 places I can put my racks in my oven. So I put one on the very bottom, and I put one 2 spaces above that. So it's not at the top, it's one below the top level. Okay, and I find for my oven, that's enough space in between to let them rise when they're baking. The other thing that I do when I'm baking, because I have an older oven, is every 10 minutes, I open my oven door and I put the top rack on the bottom and the bottom on the top, just to ensure that it's evenly golden on the top and the bottom.
So you rotate your trays, is what you're saying?
Every 10 minutes, yeah.
I put mine, when I'm baking mine, I put it on, I have a big cookie sheet, so they're both on the sheet. And it goes into the middle of my oven. I have a newer oven, and I found that works great.
So that you're going to have to play with your ovens. When we get into the second part, we'll talk about the timing as well, because that's going to depend on each individual oven. So you do want to have your pans ready to go, either with parchment paper or lightly greased. Okay, and the number of pans also is going to depend on what you're doing today. If you are doing 2 large challahs, I would recommend 2 pans, okay? And then you're going to, once it's braided, you're going to put it on a diagonal. That's how it fits, I think, the best, and it gives it room to expand when it's rising. If you're planning on doing 4 small, I usually use 2 pans, and I put them vertically. You know, I hold the pan horizontally, but I put them 2 spaced apart in a vertical orientation. So that way they have room to expand. So I would do 2 and 2. If you are planning on doing either 1 large one and rolls or 2 small one and rolls, we're going to be making 9 rolls today. I apologize, I had a typo. I said 10 in the instructions, but it's really 9. And that is something you're going to have to, again, play around with. So I'm planning on doing 2 small ones on my 1 pan, you know, holding them, putting them vertically on this pan. And then I'm going to have, I have an oversized, this one is slightly bigger. You can, it's just a little bit bigger, maybe another inch. And I do my rolls on this pan because I can space them nicely. But 9, even on a smaller pan, if they're a little bit close, if they expand, they might touch. And then when you're all done, you may have to pull them apart, okay? But the ideal thing is to have enough space, have them spaced apart so they don't touch.
Ruth, Sue has a question.
Ruth, on the parchment paper, excuse my dog, I'm so sorry. On the parchment paper, are we shiny side up to put the dough on?
There's no shiny side.
I don't have a shiny side.
There's no shiny side on parchment paper.
I don't either.
I have 2 sides.
Are you sure it's not wax paper?
No, it's a parchment.
Hold up your box. Does it it's like treated or something?
It's parchment. Okay.
That's what I have. It's the same.
Okay, so it doesn't matter.
It's the same.
Okay, we're fine.
I have one question about how much room between loaves are you allowing for expansion?
Say that again, how much?
About how much room between each loaf are you allowing for expansion?
You know, it's really evenly spaced on your pan, okay? So for example, if this is the pan, and I'm gonna put a challah loaf, I'm gonna put it here, I'm gonna come in a couple of inches from the edge, and also from this edge and this edge, kind of divide it in half is what I would say. You know, just get a mental picture that you have like a dividing line here, and then kind of center it on that side and center the other one on the other side.
Thank you.
Ruth, a couple questions. Do you want us to preheat our oven before we come on the Zoom for the next one, or no?
Yes, excellent question.
And also, wait, my second one is, are the rolls the same temperature as the loaves?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can do them simultaneously. But that is a very good question. I usually do preheat my oven. I put it on to 350 and make sure the oven racks are in the right position before I start the next step. Because, you know, occasionally in the past, I would do my things and it would rise and then I would, well, actually, no, I apologize. I don't usually turn the oven on right when we start. What I do is once they start to rise, that's when I turn my oven on.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
What do you recommend people have available for their braided challah? What for the next rising part?
What to have available?
To cover it.
Oh, okay, yes. Okay, so wait, I'm not done. Let me just tell you one more thing you're gonna need. I forgot to pull it out. You're gonna need a nice sharp knife. Okay, I have a big one because, you know, your dough is going to rise and expand. And then when you cut it, you want to have a nice big knife. So if you have a good big knife that's sharp, okay. And then as Jody started to ask, I have cloth napkins that I use to put my challahs when they're rising. And also, when you cut your dough apart and you start proportionate, you know, you want to put, let's say you're doing 2 loaves, and you're going to, so you have 2 clods of dough. Then I take one piece of dough, and I put it back in the bowl that it was rising in. Okay, so when you take your dough out of this bowl, don't throw it in your sink. Okay, when we dump it out, we're going to cut it in half. We're going to put 1/2 back in the bowl and cover it back up so it stays nice and warm again, and it can continue to rise. And then
So you want to, Ruth, I'm going to interrupt you for a second just to clarify. So when you put half your dough back in the bowl while you're playing and braiding with the other half,
yes.
You want to cover that?
Yes. You want to cover it back up, and I just use the same plastic wrap. Actually, what I do is I flip my plastic wrap over, because usually by the time it is done rising, there's a lot of moisture condensation on the undersurface of the plastic wrap. So I just flip it over and I use the dry side for the second, you know, for when I'm leaving it, waiting to use it. But when I have my second blob of dough, I put it on the counter and I just cover it with a cloth napkin, and that keeps, again, it keeps it moist. We don't want to just leave it on the counter because the dough will dry out. Okay, I would recommend having like 3 or 4 cloth napkins. I have various ones here, different sizes, and you know, but pretty lightweight. You don't want something super heavy, but these are a pretty good weight.
Okay, I want to just ask a question. If, well, it's not really a question. Is anybody doing their rising in their oven under the proof setting? Okay, you're gonna want to take your dough out probably 15 minutes ahead of time so your oven can heat up, and just let it finish its rise on the counter.
Oh, so I have 2 others, yeah.
Good to know.
Okay, I'm gonna sign off. I have to take my dog out.
Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
If you used your convection oven, is the temperature the same? And
No,
versus
No, convection's different. You have to
25
adjust.
degrees less.
right? Okay.
Okay, I'm signing off. See you all in an hour or so.
The answer to that, because I don't use a convection oven.
Except most convection ovens convert it automatically. So when I put in bake 350 in my convection, it takes it only to bake 325. So
Correct.
make sure, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so when we come back, just to recap here, you're going to have a clean, dry counter. You're going to have some flour in a cup, maybe 1/3 of a cup, standing by. You're going to have your pans with either the parchment paper or it's gonna be lightly greased. You're gonna have a knife available to cut your dough. You're gonna have a bunch of cloth napkins. And I think that that's it.
What would be the substitute for cloth napkins?
If you have a towel, I would say that's, you know, like I've been using this towel as my cleanup towel. This is like a very thin fabric.
Uh-huh. Can you use paper towel also or no?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
I wouldn't. I think it really should be cloth. Yeah, because you really want to have something that's going to cover the entire surface. Okay, so if you have, say you have like, I'll be honest with you, my napkin, when I put it on top of my dough, my challahs, you can see it's not real big. Well, maybe this way, I guess. And it just comes to the edges, okay? But I make sure that it's all entirely covered. If it's, you know, sticking up a teeny bit, you're going to be okay. But again, you don't want it to dry out. So you cover it as, you know, as best you can.
How about if you have, can you have two different cloths? Or does you only have one that's covering the whole pan?
You know, you probably could use two. I've always used one. But I think if you're going to use two, I probably would do it like partially on one half. And then, you know, you see what I'm saying? So it's like hanging off the side there and that.
How about an old pillowcase?
You see what I'm doing here? So that way it's not super heavy. It's overlapping a little bit because you want to make sure no moisture gets in there. So that's what I would do if I was using two.
Someone just mentioned, how about a clean pillowcase?
Okay. I'm trying to think how heavy that would be. It probably would work if it's not, you know, a really good thick cotton, you know, maybe an old one that's kind of worn, so it's lighter weight.
Okay.
You'll have to try it and let us know.
What is the purpose of the covering, or how does that fit? I guess I read everything about making the thing, but I didn't really read this thing about the covering. Well, what are we doing it while we're waiting to put it in the oven to bake, or?
So what happens is once you shape your dough, you've made your challahs, you're going to pick them up off your counter and you're going to put them where they're going to rise, which is right here on your pan. Okay, and then you cover it because you want to keep the moisture inside. If you don't have it covered, the dough is going to dry out, and you don't want that. It's got to stay nice and moist and covered.
So it's going to rise again, other than the rising we did in the bowl?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm glad you asked that question. It's going. So our first rise is an hour and a half. So at 12:30, we should be putting. We should have that. I'm sorry. At 12:30, we punch down the dough and we're going to form the challahs. Okay. Then we're going to put it on our pans. We're going to cover them, and they're going to sit on the counter or your warm space again for 45 minutes. That's the second rise.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
When I've used yeast, not necessarily for challah, but when I've done a second rise and I need to cover it, I've used a damp dishcloth. Have you ever done that?
I did that. You know, I think when I first started to learn how to make challah, we put the cloth over the bowl.
Right.
It was rising.
Yes.
We didn't use as much plastic back then.
Yeah.
I happen to really like the plastic for the rising. In terms of when it's doing the second rise, think in terms of this. Anything that you put on your dough is putting a weight on the dough. And if it's a wet towel, I think it's going to weigh it down a little bit.
And not wet, just damp, yeah.
We really want it to rise.
I got it.
And when you use a dry cloth, I have never had my challah stick to this. I just
Okay.
right off. So at that point, you really don't need any dampness. Yeah.
If we were a few minutes late in starting our rise and you're starting at 12:30, does it matter if we begin earlier with you?
You know, I liked my dough to rise for an hour and a half. I find that that's really a good amount of time for it to rise. In fact, why don't everybody, if your bowl is out, show us how your dough is rising. You can see mine is already starting to rise. Let me see. Are you finding, you don't have to take them out, but yes, so yours is starting to rise, I can see, right?
Is that me? I don't know who you're talking to. I'm in the green bowl.
I'm moving it around. Hold on.
Oh.
I'm gonna highlight everybody. Just hold on 1 second. I'm spotlighting. Okay, Linda, you're next. I'm gonna tell you when I add the spotlight.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Zara, you're good. I'm gonna kick you off. And
yes, very nice.
Okay, I'm moving on to the next person. Hold on. I'm moving in like different modes. Okay, hold on. Alex is next. Oh, that looks good. Okay.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, they're looking really nice.
Let's see, Judy.
Okay.
I'm putting you all on. You guys, your ladies are going through. Okay, hold on. Sue, you're next. Sue R, you're next. Okay.
Very nice.
I always put mine in a glass one because I like to see it.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
I like to watch it.
Right. Now,
That way I don't have to remember what it looked like when it started.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Okay, I'm doing too many things at once. This is best. Okay, hold on. Let's see Ellen's.
Very nice.
You can see that. Good. Okay. Sue Lutz, did you show yours? Do you want me to look yours up?
But I have a question first. It's probably a really stupid question.
Oh, it's a good one.
I have toasted sesame seeds. That wouldn't work. They have to be raw sesame seeds to put on?
Okay. That's a good question. I'm glad you asked. So, you know, I very often will put on, once we do the egg wash, I really like sesame seeds and poppy seeds. Sometimes I put both of them on. The problem, I think, with toasted sesame seeds might be that when you're, hi Amy, this is a personal friend. I haven't seen her in forever. Beautiful, beautiful. She's joining us from Texas. So thank you, Amy, for being with us. The seeds. I'm concerned that if you start with the toasted seed and you put it on and then it gets close to the heating element, then it might get pretty dark. But listen, Sue, you're right across the street from me.
Come over.
Come over, bring it. I'll put some in a Ziploc bag and hand it out to you.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay.
My pleasure.
Did everybody get to share? That's awesome. Very convenient, Sue. Did everybody get to share their rising dough if they have dough to share? Okay, Claire, I'm going to put yours in the spotlight.
Let's see.
Hold it up where you can see the side of the bowl.
There.
Like actually hold it upright. Yeah, there you go.
Beautiful.
Good job.
I am so proud of all of you. You are doing such a great job. They're beautiful.
Anybody else want to
Like
share?
we have a great teacher.
Great teacher. Great teacher.
I'm just so excited.
Okay, I'm going to run across. Should I put a mask on?
You know what? You're double.
I had one quick question. When we do the egg wash, does it have to be eggs or egg beaters are fine?
That's a good question. I've never used egg beaters, but
Okay.
I would guess that they would work just fine.
The egg wash is just to make this shiny, or it has a flavor?
Yes, it's just to make it shiny.
Okay,
So,
I'll experiment. I'll do some with egg beater and some with egg wash. We'll figure it out.
I'm just gonna go in and stick this in a bag on my door for Sue Lutz. I will be right back.
Thank you.
Hey, Jody, is there any time left in PRK?
Yeah, you can join. They're having a lovely
All right.
conversation.
I'll be back.
That's nice.
Jody, thank you for all your work and doing all the swimming stuff. It's
Oh, my
amazing.
pleasure. My pleasure. Oh, so what you can do right now is you can minimize your screen and you can use your computer or your device that you're on, or you can log off and then come back on at 12:30. I'm just going to minimize my screen and just mute it. So you'll still see me. So if you need me, just press the chat and send me a message and I'll turn my volume on or start talking because I can still hear you. Okay, and so you can go and do 10 other things you probably have to do in the next 45 minutes and then, or an hour. Actually, it's 11:30 right now. We're going to regroup at 12:30.
We're gonna regroup at 12:15.
I'm sorry, 12:15, my fault. I'll be on at 12:15.
No, you know what, I think actually, 12:15, 12:20, I think we should all have our screens back on. I'm just gonna leave mine on, but I am gonna clean up a little bit, and then if anyone has any questions, I'll still be here. But I would say about 12:15, 12:20, so that we all actually get started at 12:30. Okay. For those of you who are here, before I do my cleanup, I just want to give you a little preview of what we're going to be making. So if you can, this was Debbie Seppelitz's idea. I thought it was genius. Can you see that? Doesn't that look like a challah? No, this is dish towels, and we're going to demonstrate how to do the braiding. This is a 4-braided challah. It's a very simple method. I don't think you can mess up on this. And the reason I'm holding the ends is because you pinch them together and you tuck it under. Okay, so it's not going to look like that, but when you have your challah, it's going to look like that. So in part 2, when we get together, I'm going to show you this. I'm going to unbraid it and then show you how to do a simple 4-braid. If any of you are already challah bakers and you want to learn a more complicated way of braiding, it's interesting because I do a 4-braid and Debbie does a 4-braid, and they look totally different. So this is her method, and I'm going to teach this today because it's really foolproof. My method is, it's more complicated. So if there's anyone in the group today who wants to learn the more complicated one, the difference is, you saw the pictures of my challahs, but I don't think they really do it justice. What happens with the other braid is it just ends up being a little bumpy on top, and you see more bumps on the sides. It's kind of hard to explain, but this looks like it was braided, like this. The other braid looks like it was braided some, different way because it has the top, it has the sides, and I think it tends to be taller in the center and maybe a little bit smaller. I don't know, but I'm going to offer that today if anyone wants to do it. Okay. Oh, you know what I forgot to mention when we come back? I forgot your little bowl for your egg wash. That's another thing you're going to need. So you're going to need just a small bowl, and you're going to need a fork to beat the egg slightly, and then you need your pastry brush to brush it on the dough, on the challah. But this isn't until really part 3. This is before it goes in the oven. So if you have it ready, you have a head start. It'll be ready for once they've risen. But this is after they rise. Okay, I'm going to just put all my things in the sink, get them out of the way.
Ruth, can I just ask one question?
Yes.
when I made challah before, I used all-purpose flour, and I see you have bread flour.
Yes.
All-purpose flour, some of it was, when I made the challah, it seemed dry. And I was wondering, is there